Hello everyone, my name is Taylor Ruggles, and for our final presentation in our History of Medicine class, I decided to choose the topic of Kuru, or laughing death. Kuru was first discovered in New Guinea, and the Fore, or the natives of New Guinea, report its first cases as early as 1900. However, further research linked it potentially as far back as the Neanderthals crossing with the Homo sapiens. When its first cases were discovered, it spread quickly through their land in the next 40 years. This spread was due to relocation of tribes, due to lack of resources, or potentially even this sickness taking over so much of their tribe. And at the time, the Fore didn't know what the causes were, and they didn't even know what the disease was. Upon further research, information on Kuru was first published in 1957 by Vincent Zegas and Jadusek. It is now known to be caused by a single spontaneous mutation that created an infectious agent in the brain. So just one gene mutated and caused this disease. And I'll go into a little more detail about that later and how the infectious disease was amplified by the ingestion of deceased natives, which eventually led to the epidemic. In the beginning, the early symptoms included shaking, loss of coordination, and difficulty walking. Like I said, they had no idea what the causes were, but once they noticed that the victims of this disease were dying, they believed it was connected to sorcery. They thought that an enemy of the victim would cast Kuru upon them. But later, they discovered that the symptoms evolved to rapid jerking, sudden crying or laughing, and the inability to speak. It's understood to be caused by a mutation and then enhanced by the ingestion of dead relatives. And for a cure, they really didn't have much back then, and we don't have anything today still. So back then, the victims were fed casuarina bark, which is a type of homeopathic treatment, but it didn't really help a lot. The women were actually treated worse than the men, and they were prone to laughing, they were usually joked around with, and they were made fun of sexually. They were treated as if they were mental patients. Now we know that Kuru doesn't have a cure, and it was the first disease to be discovered that was a prion, or a mysterious infectious agent, and that actually led to a new classification of disease. Scientists have learned that there is no cure, and it usually leads to death within 1 to 2 years of contraction. Dementia and behavioral changes are symptoms as well. They're the more intense symptoms, and those symptoms are the ones that led to the eventual death. Kuru itself did not cause death, but when the victims would get dementia, they had behavioral changes that led to the lack of concern for their health. And that can lead to starvation and malnutrition, and then eventually death. Here are some examples of Kuru in society. So on the left hand here, we have a boy with Kuru displaying athetoid movements, which are movements that are similar to those of patients with cerebral palsy. It's circular, slow motions of the torso, arms, and legs. And then on the right hand side, we have a group of Kuru victims. This is potentially what it would look like in New Guinea if the Fore there or a certain tribe maybe had a lot of victims with Kuru. Kuru, like I said, was the first discovered prion and the first discovered neurodegenerative disease from an infectious agent, and that is what led to the creation of a new class of diseases. It's been directly related to cannibalism, and that cannibalism has enhanced the infectious agent in the brain. At first, the mutation that happened in the gene was benign. It didn't have any effect on the victim, but as they started ingesting their deceased relatives, that sort of turned on the mutation, and that's what turned that mutation lethal. Kuru research has also been linked to 3 Nobel Prizes, and it impacted research on nucleation polymerization, which is the elongation of actin filaments, and led to the enhancement of the idea of conformational disorders, which are a buildup of unfolded or misfolded proteins. So proteins are folded in certain ways due to their amino acids, and this mutation would have caused a different folding pattern that would have messed up the protein in the body. And here we have my sources. for the information and the picture. And if you guys have any questions, make sure to leave them in the comments below. And thank you guys for watching my presentation.